Anton, thank you so much for joining us here at SuperReturn International.
Thank you for having me.
CalPERS is the largest public pension fund in the US, and as such you have, I guess, inherent challenges with what you need to do and how responsible you need to be with that fund. Tell me more about what you see as the key challenges in 2024.
Well, we always have a scale issue, as you point out, with status as the largest US public pension. And we're looking to deal with that by partnering more with managers, not just through their funds, but through co-investment, so we can deploy more capital on a smaller set of managers. And specifically in this environment, we're dealing with higher interest rates, and we're doing something that likely we would have done anyway, diversify the portfolio away from buyout. It happens that we're doing it during a more advantageous time, given the rise in rates. Buyout will always be a majority of our portfolio, but we're moving from about 80% buyout, 20% growth, to 60% buyout and 40% growth in venture. And it's part of diversifying, but it's also about trying to capture the returns in a period where we're seeing green shoots of a new technological revolution.
CalPERS weren't in private equity for a long time, and you joined 18 months ago, and that was your raison d'etre, if you like. So tell me about that and how you feel about taking on that role, and what's the opportunity there?
CalPERS has a storied history in buyout, and for 3 decades. I think that the change now is about achieving more scale for the program, and we've taken private equity essentially from 8% to 17%. As the pool grows, we deploy more and more dollars need to go out, but we're trying to also deploy the dollars beyond buyout. So in 2022, we essentially merged what we called growth and innovation and private equity. And private equity, I think, more captures the full spectrum of private equity broadly defined, venture, growth, and buyout. And part of that is to have that diversification, but it's also because we think through manager selection, we can add alpha to the portfolio in asset classes that have more return dispersion.
Tell me about manager selection, because that's become a hot topic, and this week has been talked about a lot in terms of how important that's going to be in this sort of environment. What are you looking for? What are the key pillars and fundamental partnerships you're looking for to bring that success?
Yeah. Well, it's where we spend most of our time. As limited partner investors, we are, just as our partners are focusing on portfolio companies, we're focusing on the selector of those portfolio companies. So we're looking for partners that agree with our values, diversity, ESG, but in a way that's return-seeking, a way that's meant to enhance returns. And also, we're trying to identify inflection points where our capital is best compensated, with firms that have a long history of being able to find those inflection points, or managers that we think will be part of the next set of top firms. And each of those has slightly different angles in our selection process. If it's a storied firm, we're just essentially looking for the ability to scale with that manager when they're oversubscribed and getting a strong allocation. If it's a new manager, it's about making sure that our capital is leading the way, but we're not stranded in a broken fundraise. So the selection criteria are a little bit different. In one case, you're trying to prognosticate whether a firm will make it, whereas in the other, you're trying to make sure that there's no disruption in how the firm has historically performed.
And are you looking for partners and GPs who have perhaps been cycle tested as well, who've
Yes.
been around longer? Tell me about that and why.
Yeah, so that's the core of that first category, the established firms. And the advantage with them is they have likely been through multiple cycles, and their strategy, while there are obviously always refinements for the firm, is proven across different macroeconomic periods. But there's always that risk that the past won't predict the future, and so we're looking for anything that would disrupt that pattern of outperformance.
Talking about, you used the word disruption there, and it would be remiss of me not to mention it. This week we've heard a lot about Gen AI and how that's going to disrupt, and there are other disrupting factors geopolitically. We have elections in, I think, half the world's population have voted in democratic elections this year, and obviously US election and UK election coming up. So what do you have to be mindful of, and How do you sort of stay resolute in that kind of environment that you have got to, what have you got to fall back on, if you like?
Yeah. Well, so for us, it is about consistency. We have done a post-mortem on our historical performance, and part of that was the findings in 2022 about the lost decade for CalPERS and private equity, which to a large extent was about underallocation to PE, but it was also a story of inconsistent allocation to the asset class. Our hope is to be consistent, reliable investors, and so that the macroeconomic cycle, the business cycle is not something that we need to pay as much attention to. It's more about, as you identified, making sure that we're partnering with firms that can navigate across a full cycle.
Now, with all that in mind, you've obviously got 5,000 of the industry here in Berlin, and you've got a chance to talk to a lot of those potential partners.
Yeah.
Why is this a good environment for that, and what have you gained from being at SuperReturn International this week?
So with one trip, I can meet with many more managers, so I'm saving the taxpayer money, and that's very important to us. So it's a very productive trip where on one airline ticket, I get to see most of our existing managers and then see a few prospects.
You talked there about the taxpayer and your responsibility with the
Yeah.
fund that you have. You've got something like 460 billion assets under management. Does that sound about right?
Just about 500.
500 billion, sorry.
Yeah.
So you do have a huge potential, but a huge responsibility. How do you see your role in terms of that investment actually doing good for society too?
Yeah. So in two respects. Our core mission is to our members to pay their pensions. And as fiduciaries, we're responsible to those members. In the course of doing that and pursuing the best return, we do think that there are opportunities to be transformational. And part of that is participating in the ecosystem of venture, in which California is very well represented. And unfortunately, CalPERS has historically not participated in that. We've always thought it's an irony that CalPERS, whose members have made possible the ecosystem of venture capital through public service, police officers, firefighters, teachers, administrators, those beneficiaries have essentially not been able to receive the benefits of returns of venture. So we're very excited to get them access to that in their retirement.
And also, I guess that will be very important reputationally for you going forward too.
I think it's, a successful venture program is indicative of a healthy overall alternatives program. And it also is healthy in terms of diversification. The sources of return for venture are a little bit disconnected from, less connected to the economic cycle and more to those inflection points in technological change.
You've been with CalPERS, as I said, for about 18 months. So what do you see them, you've bedded in now. Come on, it's time to, what's next? So
well, it's my second tour. So 5 years across my first leg and this leg.
And so what do you see the next 18 months holding for you, and what are you most excited about going forward?
Yeah, it's really about consistency of the execution. If we can do what we've done the last 2 years for the next 3 to 4, we do think we'll have achieved a place where our portfolio is self-sustaining and will be an enduring source of returns for the program.
And just finally, with all the conversations you might have here this week with potential partners and colleagues, what do you hope they take away having chatted to you this week? What will you impart, do you hope?
The consistency that the private equity program will pursue, that the private equity program is on the same path under the leadership of our CEO. We are about to undergo a CIO transition, but would underscore the consistency of leadership at the CEO level and her commitment to private equity, which we're executing on.
Anton, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been really great to talk to you.
Thank you.